Woo-wee. Welcome back to Freaky Friday, y'all. And this is going to be a one-stop shop today. I'm doing one video. We're going to bang out every single of your favorite stocks. So pay attention because we're going to go through Nio, GameStop, AMC, and then Ethereum and Doge. But we're going to be quick, right? So stay with me, right? Nio. Nio has been an absolute spaceship. I don't know how, I don't know when, who pumped this thing, but they are unrelenting. These guys are crazy. And mind you, you just had your daily golden cross, but you've gapped up every single day. It's actually kind of crazy. So if you print one more candle like this, I don't know. I wouldn't know what to say. What we had drawn up was because you had the bull flag price target here, and that still stands true, right? You broke out right here, so your estimated range would be the 7 to 730 range until you would look to peel back and maybe either fill some of these gaps or consolidate until you hit this trend line. But you have been up and up only right now, which is insane. I love to see the bulls make money and for the bears to get crushed. So we're going to have to continue to watch this stock and see if there's any pullbacks for potential long entry here, because you have gaps all the way back to this bull flag. I'm not saying this is going to happen. This is in the realm of possibilities, though, is a pullback to 450. You have a gap at 515, and then you have a gap you made and left today at 565 about. So this thing is on a mission. It is on a mission to crush everything behind it. So you are continuing to increase volume while you increase price, which is very bullish. So I don't believe it's done yet. I think you'll see another green candle tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens from there. This is a day-by-day basis as you are blasting off. So we'll go over the candle close every single day. Pretty standard candle close today. Not inside bar, but pretty much just a breakout candle. I mean, it's not a doji. It's not a hammer. It's not a shooting star. It is not anything bearish. It's not anything but bullish. So Nio looks great on the daily. The only thing I would say is the monthly, you got to be getting close. You are on top of the Bollinger Bands. You wicked out of them and you closed below them so far. So you're going into the monthly Bollinger Bands that we've been talking about. As soon as you get above that mid band, it will begin to bulge, and it is now at resistance. So I would expect some kind of wick to $7, very similar to this, right? When you wicked into the mid band and rejected, I would expect a wick into that $7 price target, and then a steady rejection as you build more muster to go higher. Mustard? Who knows? I freaking love mustard. And then the quarterly chart, you are getting a little bit more of an aggressive curl up here on the quarterly MACD, which you have not seen since back here, guys. So I cannot understate that enough or overstate that enough, that is inherently extremely bullish. And I mean, we know the story, right? You got a bullish cross on the MACD on the quarterly chart, and you went up 2,900%. Let's call it 3,000%. That's absurd. That's obscene. I don't know if that's going to happen again, but if it did, theoretically, right? These are absolute slingshot moon targets. Let's say you take it from $7 up 3,000%. You'd land somewhere between 200. For that to occur, you would need some kind of fundamental change or news. But nothing's given, nothing's guaranteed. So Nio, beautiful close. Let's just take one more look at the weekly here to see what the close was. And that is a boom boom candle, baby. That's so beautiful to see that Nio is continuing to absolutely prove people wrong. I mean, a weekly candle of 31%, just breaking every single barrier that held you back. And now we have to see off of this high close and high volume candle, what happens next. I think continuation until $7, in my opinion. All right, GameStop. GME. GME is probably right behind Nio, in my opinion. You're going to see a lot of these small cap risk-on assets begin to squeeze. It's going to become almost, in my opinion, not financial advice, that time of the market cycle where you can throw a dart on the board and oftentimes you will be right. That you will see a lot of these smaller cap stocks go ballistic. So we're getting what we talked about all the way back here. We're getting that weekly MACD curl up that we wanted to see on the chart going into the pinnacle of this wedge or of this bull pennant. And that is inherently a crazy bullish thing because the last times you've gotten a weekly cross up on the MACD, 40%, 65%. You get the picture. A weekly MACD cross is very, very bullish. I myself love momentum trades, and this would be just that. You'd be taking a pretty low buy at 22.89 while getting a weekly MACD cross while crossing out of this downside resistance that's pinned you down for a full calendar year. And what I wanted to cover on GameStop particularly was the daily Bollinger Bands. You've began to do something very special, and you are above the mid band on the daily time frame. Now, this is the tightest the GME Bollinger Bands have ever been that I'm aware. If not, I think I saw something back by IPO was the only other time that you were this tight and this coiled on the daily Bollinger Band. So things look kind of special. And you really, the top band is at the top resistance. The lower band is at the lower resistance. So you really just have to break one way or the other. And whichever way you do break is going to be very violent. I would expect this thing going into earnings, fundamental changes, gap fills northward at $28 and $30, and then 73 is the other long-term gap that you made back here. When was this? June of 2021. I expect for GME to make a really nice-sized move off of this mid-band of the Bollinger Bands, and I would expect these to begin to expand into earnings and that you would come to test this death cross on the daily. Break above this, everything's off the table. Things could get insane. And so I'm watching GameStop very, very closely for the break of this topside resistance. And not just a break, but a close above, because you broke it here, you broke it here, you broke it here, you tapped it there, you broke it here, and you've only closed above it a handful of times. Only within this range, and this was a nasty fake out. You are not ready for this breakout, but you are now. And with the Bollinger Bands in the daily time frame being only $1 between each other, it's go time on GameStop, I think. I don't think that there's a lot of time left on this stock before you see nasty volatility. So whether you play a stranglehold on options of betting on volatility, I think that would be the play here. You would only have until September 6th, which is, funny enough, right before earnings. So if you follow the channel, you know our thesis on GameStop earnings. Every single time you've gone into them, you have pumped preemptively. Pumped there, you pumped here, you pumped here into earnings. You pumped here into earnings. And believe it or not, you pumped here into earnings before you absolutely capitulated. But typically, earnings on GameStop have been a beautiful thing, and I'd like to see them continue to take that momentum going into, I believe, the 9th it is for the earnings there, but not a whole lot on GameStop. You know our thesis. You know that we're waiting for these gap fills to take any kind of profits, but that is just my thesis, guys. You guys do what works best for you. Not financial advice. Do not do or act on what I say, y'all. Let's get into AMC. I've not looked at AMC in quite some time because not a lot has changed, right? You're still waiting for some kind of macro breakout here. However, looking at the chart, the daily Bollinger Bands are constricting very similar to GameStop's. Very, very similar. And it looks like you are holding, I kind of redrew this trend line to be the fake out from earnings as upward support, and that's where you flipped. That's where you flipped bullish. So very, very good close today, but what you have to do is you have to regain the 50-day EMA. There is no ands or buts, and ifs, buts about it. There's nothing. You have to regain this so you can see price action above $3, and then eventually you will break this macro downtrend that you've been in since 2023, guys. Has been pinning you ever since the APE to AMC conversion. And as soon as you break that with volume and you close above, which you have never done since that APE AMC conversion, except for right here and a little bit back here, but that was a fake out, then you will begin to skyrocket, in my opinion. Not only are the daily Bollinger Bands very tight on AMC, but our thesis on AMC is that the macro picture is beginning to develop. Sorry, I'm hiccuping from this Waterloo. The macro picture is beginning to develop in ways that it has not since 2020. The micro, you have the daily MACD about to cross green, which looks really, really nice. And you have this kind of structure that I built up that I think could happen. But you never know. If GameStop goes early, guys, next week, you could be trading up here. And then the whole AMC picture of, oh no, we're going all the way down, gets avoided. That's my best case. That's my hope, right? All right. Let's see the weekly close on AMC. Your weekly close is a hanging man candle. You could say that, inherently a wick is bullish, but the hanging man candle typically isn't. So we'll have to see how this plays out next week, Monday. Because to be fair, right, you got the same thing here before you went up 12% and 6% the next 2 weeks. You got the same thing here, a hanging man candle, before you got a extreme rally from $2.50 to $4, right? And you got the same thing here before you went up $11. So based off of the micro trend, the hangman candle almost acts as a bear fake for the stock, which is kind of funny. Funny to see that. You need a green close next week. And I say that because you need this to hold green. If your weekly MACD crosses red, you're going down here. That's the story, pretty much, right? Let's zoom out. That is your macro wedge that you're within. Nasty stuff within the macro double bottom formation. So you would expect this to begin to curl back up. And we have these resistant lines, $10, that's your previous all-time low. This should be 13. That is your gap fill on the daily. You have 19 as a gap fill, and then you have the weekly gap fill at $43. Has not been touched, has not been filled. At some point, I would anticipate that you've come back to fill $43. I know it sounds extreme, it sounds crazy, but typically these kind of gaps on the weekly eventually do fill, believe it or not, especially if the stock is showing longer term accumulation patterns. But the whole thing on AMC that really got me back into the stock, because I was in AMC way back here, rode it all the way down, found a way to get out profitable and roll into crypto and GME. However, what got me back interested into AMC were the monthly Bollinger Bands. I mean, guys, the tightest the monthly Bollinger Bands have ever been on this stock. Meanwhile, you have the quarterly MACD curling up for the first time since 2020. You have the tightest Bollinger Bands. You have a double bottom on the macro, very similar to back here before you squoze. And then you have this wedge that you're in the pinnacle of. I don't think for a second that is a coincidence that fundamental changes and debt news comes out down here. AMC has record-breaking earnings. EBITDA is improving. Costs are going down. You just need one thing. If it's GameStop, if it's rate cuts, if it's wars ending, to send this thing higher, and you could do something very similar to what Nio's doing right now. For retrospect, I'll show you. Right, this is Nio's monthly Bollinger Bands. You climbed the mid band, and then you squoze into the top band. At some point, these are going to expand. AMC is still in a value buy territory because you are below the midband. And I do believe that you are going to mount the midband at 380 and then squeeze to the top band at 540. Now, once that happens, you should expect a rejection. After that rejection, consolidation, you form some kind of bigger macro pattern, you would expect to challenge these gap fills. Now, there's no saying on how high it could go, but it could get very squeezy if you're able to accomplish mounting this midband for the first time since back here in 2022 of March, guys. So that is a very significant task that you have before you if you're able to do it. Stock looks great. So quarterly MACD curling up, almost crossing. That is insane. That is absurd. You're looking at it? That is absurd. That is obscene. Last time you had a quarterly MACD cross was back here. And truthfully, it is one of these candles that triggers it. And I would not be surprised if you saw one of those candles trigger it again, because you are only going to break this with volume if you get one of these candles. That's what it's going to take. And if GameStop triggers that kind of candle, man, this thing is going to the freaking stratosphere. But for the moment, you're pinned. So we will have to wait and see. AMC is still a waiting stock. You have to, if you're super bullish, long-term, not a bad area to accumulate. Not financial advice, but people have been down here averaging down. What else? Quarterly, daily, weekly. Yeah. AMC, I would anticipate some kind of chop unless GameStop goes first. Now let's get into ETH. ETH, baby. Ethereum. A new all-time high and a daily cross almost coming. You would anticipate this within the next day or two. You're touching the top of the daily Bollinger Band. Let's turn that off now. And you broke from this bull channel or this bull flag, right? Let's take the profit target. I was very bullish on this because the profit target of the breakout takes you up to $6,000. To $6,000. Imagine your crypto portfolio when ETH goes to $6,000, and it could go to $5,000 before the weekends close. That is not off the table. Typically, once you clear these previous highs, you do so with momentum and you gap the frick up, guys. I mean, you could close next week at 5.5. I'll give you an example of the last time ETH did this, right? A very good example is back here. ETH topped out at 2.7. That was the all-time high, right? You almost test the range, you test the previous wick, and then you begin to gap up. You could see something very, very similar on ETH that would take risk on assets, that would take all of your altcoins and Bitcoin even higher. Bitcoin dominance is going to be in the mud, which I love to see. We wanted to cover one more thing on ETH, and that was the MACD crossing green on the monthly for the first time since this little fake out before the breakdown. But a true MACD cross is something like this back in the 2020 bull market, which I believe ETH is unlocking the doors to, right? $252 was where ETH was priced in May of 2020. By the end of 2021, ETH was at $5,000 almost. Now, I'm not going to say that you're going to see that kind of gain on Ethereum. I think that would be silly. But I do think there's a world where you get from 6 to 9 grand and altcoins see a new all-time high. That is my belief. That is my hopium. So let me be in hopium, guys. Last thing I want to cover was Dogecoin. And Doge is going to be following within Ethereum's footsteps here. You are getting a monthly MACD cross sometime soon, and your weekly candle is a bullish hammer. That is a ridiculously bullish weekly candle. Beautiful bounce off the 50-day EMA, and the first time you've gotten a weekly candle close like that since either back here or what's a better example? There's not a whole lot of these. Dogecoin does not typically do this. I would say the best example would be back here where you wicked a hammer candle into a major run. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen again, but with the way that Ethereum is going, I do believe breaking this 25-cent range is going to unlock the doors to 35 and then 48 in a hurry. Shorts could get Thanos snapped here, and it's a very, very beautiful thing because Dogecoin typically also leads stocks like GME, AMC. So if you see Dogecoin begin to run, that might be your sign to rotate your capital into these risk-on assets, as typically this has been like the twilight time before these things turn around pretty heavily in a really nasty way. If you haven't seen how to call these tops almost, I'm never going to call the exact top, but there are signs that you can watch that are in the previous videos that I've done. Let's check the daily. Beautiful daily candle. You're going to get a daily MACD cross. You're up 10, 11% today. Whew, and you break this and it gets very real very fast on Doge. So that is my update today, guys. Please slap the subscribe button. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys. So what are you doing? Subscribe, guys. God bless and peace. See ya.